Ladies and gentlemen, today I have a very special episode that you're going to really fall in love with. And I have someone who was the first employee of Calm, which was the #1 world health and fitness app in the App Store. And so this was the first employee at Calm who ran all the engineering during Calm's growth phase, which is not an easy feat. And today, and right now, they basically have launched a new app around mindfulness and meditation and mental health. And with great ado, I actually have Tyler Sheaffer. So welcome to the show, Tyler. Cool. Yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah, today we're going to talk about quite a bit of topics as far as like engineering, your health journey. You have a lot of experience in the industry as far as like engineering and working on apps, shipping to the App Store and scaling and growing them up, which is really amazing. But today, in today's AI age, you actually have an app in the App Store and around mental health and using AI around this whole topic. So just tell us a little bit more about the app and kind of what you're working on, because that's quite a big feat to go from one big thing to this next new venture, and want to hear more about this. Wow. Wow. Ah, whoa. Yeah, so this app is it sounds like it's going to be able to transform people's lives in ways that like you can't really do a lot one to one. And it sounds like this whole space for mental health, you may have learned a lot of things about people's journeys in terms of like I remember with Calm for meditation. When I worked at Apple, like they were actually handing that out saying, hey, if you want to use this app for meditation and like your mental health to kind of help you, and I feel like, as an app, it's like, wow, this is actually very useful to kind of get me into a pattern of things. Anything that can help me as far as like an app, I'm always like really all about. And so tell me more about like this space because, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Let me, I can hear you, but I think my bad. Here's, you should be able to hear me
Oh,
now.
shit.
We're good. Okay.
And can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I think we're good now. Cool.
Blink
I
twice.
guess
Blink twice if you can hear me.
blink twice. Okay. No, thank you everyone for kind of tuning in and doing that. What we can do is just kind of go ahead and rewind and restart the show right from the very top, and then kind of do the reintroduction again. That way, folks will kind of do the thing. And what I could do is just kind of recut the show so we could start it again. Because I could actually just move the playhead forward so that people who rewatch this will be able to rewatch it from the beginning. So yeah, welcome to the live stream, everyone. This was like a little quick warm up now that we have the thing here. This is pretty cool. Yeah, thank you for kind of doing with this. So yeah, I guess like with that, let me see if I can kind of redo the introduction again and kind of start from the top. Appreciate it. So it's just been a couple minutes here. So all right, Tyler, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, today on our very episode, we have one of the first employees at Calm. And for those who don't know, Calm was the world's first, it's a world #1 health and fitness app in the App Store. And that transition to go from there to this new AI app venture is going to be really groundbreaking for us to kind of talk about. As someone with over a decade plus experience in the industry, writing these types of apps, we're going to be able to learn quite a bit from his journey And this wonderful person and human being, his name is Tyler Sheaffer. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Hey everyone. Thanks for having me, Ray. Excited to be here.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Deja vu. welcome to the show. Yeah. And so tell us more about what you're working on, because working at Calm, it was like a really big app as far as how it's had its world impact and how it came into the world. And so you're starting there from the very beginnings, and as far as like engineering, kind of what that was all about, and kind of what you're getting into now.
Yeah, so I think my career has always been about basically using technology to help people with their mental health. So I started at Calm as their first employee and really scaled it up. We ended up becoming the world's #1 health and fitness app. And we basically taught meditation to more people than anyone else has ever done in the history of the world. I think we taught meditation to like over 150 million people by the time I left. So that was an
Wow.
amazing experience. Learned a lot about how to scale a tech stack and a backend, to thousands of requests per second. Learned how to scale a team. Um, and obviously learned how to scale a product. And I think my career has always been kind of at the intersection of product and tech. So I'm an engineer for sure. I'm not like a product manager, but I've always been more passionate about kind of like the user experience side of things. I started out as a front end engineer, and then I've really gotten deep into AI in the past 3, 4 years. So like before ChatGPT, but not way before ChatGPT. I was like really focused on AI, and I think at that point in my career, I'd kind of taken some time off from Calm, and I'd left Calm. And I was thinking like, hey, like, how do you use like new technology? Like, what's the next version of Calm? I don't think it's just going to be more like audio sleep stories and meditations like Calm was. And how do you use AI to really help people with their mental health? And so that was kind of the question that got us building the new company that I have now, which is called Mentla. And we have the world's best AI therapist. So
Whoa.
we've been told that by a number of kind of independent groups that it's like the world's best and most advanced. And we actually see that in like our retention. I mean, people just love the product. And so, happy to talk more about how we built that and what it's like. But it's been a really fun journey to kind of like upskill with like AI being like a new thing and being able to keep reinventing my skill set, but also still be kind of working in the mental health space. So there's kind of a continuity in my career, but also like getting to constantly reinvent yourself also. And I think that combination is just really fun. So
That's really incredible. Yeah, I kind of want to learn more about this app, because some people like right now, like in this space, they're just saying, "Hey, I'm just going to throw something at it, and is this just going to be like a normal chat bot, or like what is it that you have going in your app that is going to help people kind of transform the space, especially for how they would use it and so forth?"
yeah. So I think we've been kind of through the idea maze, as they say, on what works for mental health and AI and what resonates. We've tried like simple approaches, like basically like a very sophisticated prompt, as well as like a RAG system that kind of pulls in relevant context. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. For example, like the Grok app has a therapist, and that's just a prompt and like a very simple memory system. There's a number of like YC. I see someone mentioning in the comments like a Y Combinator company called Sonia. We've looked at them. A lot. There's a few other ones, but like a lot of them are just wrappers. Like they just call a single prompt. And the thing that we've seen is that like the retention on that just like goes to zero. Like it's just never going to retain if all you're doing is just calling a prompt. It's just going to get stale too quickly. Um,
Mm.
so the system we've built, you know, we focus on basically building out a sophisticated mental model of every single user.
Wow.
And so as you talk with that system, we're basically building up like a representation of you and your strengths, your weaknesses. We kind of have like almost like a full sense of what you need in therapy. And the interesting thing about therapy is that it's actually, in our view, like the hardest conversational AI problem. And the reason for that is that you have to have like super long horizon optimization. Like you can't just be optimizing for the next token or even just the next answer or even just like this conversation. You have to be thinking about the long term, like over the next several months. How are you going to be optimizing that person's outcome? And so in order to do something like that, you have to have much more sophisticated representation of someone than just like, whatever you're going to get from kind of a simple RAG system. So like, for example, think about your partner if you have one, or maybe your parents if you don't. If you're having a conversation with someone you know that well, like what matters is not like what they said yesterday at 3 p.m. That's just a fact. But that's not actually that relevant. What matters is like your understanding of like what are their goals, what are their desires, like what do they want out of this conversation, what are they struggling with right now? Like these are the types of things that actually make someone deeply understood. And so when our therapist comes into a new conversation with you, it actually comes into that conversation with like a strong opinion about exactly what it thinks you need. That doesn't mean that it's rigid and that it's not going to then be flexible to what you kind of present with during the conversation, but it does have like almost like a clinical opinion about where it wants to take that conversation based on what it knows about you. And we're actually doing
Wow.
processing about a user between sessions. So like when you're not using it and you're sleeping and you're between, on Monday you used it and then on Tuesday you're going to use it again. On Monday night, like we're doing a bunch of processing to understand you even better. So
That is really, really incredible. And it sounds like it comes from a place with people who have a lot of professional background and experience in this, because the level of detail that you're describing this app is not like, hey, I just threw this against a wall and here it is sticking. And so have you guys worked with a lot of professionals in this space, or had like, it sounds like you said other people have even evaluated who are in the professional space and they rank this
yeah.
app as really high as well, right?
Yeah, we've gotten some independent, like third party evaluations of ourselves and others in the space, in terms of like its clinical abilities effectively. Um, the one way we think about it is like there's really two optimization goals. One is clinically effective and the other is engaging. And so if you don't have both of those, then you're not going to succeed in this task, because you can be clinically effective, but if it's not engaging, like the user is just going to drop off, right? They're just not going to come back.
Oh,
And then I think the flip side of that, which is more common in the space, is like it's just engaging, but it's not actually like driving you towards a solution or a set of actions that's going to actually help your mental health. Um,
mm,
I think you really need to do both. And so that's really been our optimization goal. And then also doing that in like a long horizon way. So it's not just even just this conversation, like I was saying. So that's kind of how we think about our optimization. Um, in terms of like, we have clinicians on staff that help kind of ground our system. So when we're
wow.
evaluating how the system is performing, we're using like anonymized and random samples and feeding those to like real human clinicians that are then able to analyze and help us kind of steer the system towards not only safer but also more effective outcomes. And so these are folks who are, professors teaching new students how to be therapists in their career,
Wow.
and kind of
Mm.
people of that stature who are kind of helping us ground our evaluation of how the system performs.
Oh, that's really cool. So where can people find out some more information on this app, or where they can get it from, or where they can kind of learn
Yeah.
about it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's called Mentla, mentla.com.
Mm.
So yeah, just go to mentla.com and you can try it out. It's free to try, and you actually can use it indefinitely for free. You can't do as long of sessions, and you can only do every other day. But if you want to do unlimited and use it for hours a day, you can subscribe. It's pretty cheap. It's not going to break the bank, and I think that's one of the things that is among the many things that is so powerful here is that you can do it 24/7. It's really affordable. When you look at real human therapy, it's hundreds of dollars an hour for like a top 10% therapist, and
Wow.
at like $100 an hour for like a mediocre therapist, right? So if you want to get like a top 1% therapist, you're going to be paying $300 plus an hour at least. And we think that like ours is quickly approaching kind of that top 1% therapist level. Um, and we're hill climbing on the evals that we have, and so that's quickly rapidly improving as well. So yeah, if you want to join Mentla, you can kind of pick the personality of your therapist. We have 12 different therapists you can pick from, and they each kind of have different emphasis. They're all able to do any modality of therapy that you want. So they all have kind of the same like strengths and skill set, so to speak, but they have just a little bit different emphasis, and kind of
Hmm.
a little bit different personalities. But yeah,
Hmm.
would love for everyone to take a spin.
Oh, this is interesting, because I was actually going to ask you this exact question. It's like, how does this compare to ChatGPT? I know a lot of people have been like,
Yes.
even myself, like everyone says, like, I just tell ChatGPT everything. And,
Yeah.
it's like, and this is what it calls in sick. I'll go on vacation. I love this.
A
Yeah.
little cheeky
Challenges
there
to
with
fight.
that. A little cheeky with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're really not positioning ourselves and aren't against human therapists. We don't think that what we're doing is a replacement for human therapists as much as it is a supplement. We do think for some people it can maybe mean that they don't have to go see a human therapist, but if you're already in therapy, there's no reason to stop doing that just because you're using mentla. But we do think that can actually significantly speed up maybe the results that you're going to see. In terms of how it compares to ChatGPT, I think there's a lot of different ways. So the first thing to say is that therapy is actually the number one use case for ChatGPT. Like
Oh,
overall, just like
oh,
literally the number one is mental health support. It's not always quite therapy per se, but just like help with your mental health, which is a major use case, and right now is the number one use case for ChatGPT. So I think that that speaks to the demand here. Um, I think there's so many different ways that we think that ChatGPT is either ineffective or potentially even dangerous for folks who really need professional help. And a lot of those reasons are why we built the system the way we did. So one of those would be actually kind of related to what I was saying about like the optimization. So with ChatGPT, the optimization is really just going to be kind of like, does the user like this response right now? Um, but for therapy, like that's actually a really bad optimization metric because there's oftentimes in a conversation with a therapist, like their job is not necessarily to make you feel good all the time. They should actually be helping you realize things that are quite challenging, or maybe
oh,
helping you realize how you're coming across to someone that you love and that you're hurting with your behavior. Like they shouldn't be sugarcoating things. They should be helping you gain insight about yourself and how you come across, or
wow.
how your own patterns are like deeply affecting, your kids are really hurting because of your behavior, like really important stuff for you to realize, right? And that's like the
Oh,
exact opposite of a comfortable conversation. And that's what's so powerful about it. That's what makes therapy work. And so if you just
oh.
RLHF your way to like, did I get a thumbs up for this message? Like, it's never going to be able to do anything like that. And so that's why when I talk about like the long horizon optimization, like that's a really important part of what makes it superior to ChatGPT. Um, and so,
Whoa. So can
I
we
think that
break that
that's
part a little bit
the sick.
more?
Yeah, go
Because
ahead. Yeah,
there is that thing that ChatGPT came out with earlier in one of the updates where it would just literally agree with you with everything. It's like, hey, you're the greatest.
exactly.
That's a great idea. And you're like, wait, I don't think that's a good idea.
Exactly.
Your insight's really great. So you're saying
Exactly.
from your guys' perspective, from a professional, because it's, it sounds like everyone who's working on the team is extremely professional here. Yeah, give me a little bit more insight on the kind of like you're saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a number of things. So ChatGPT is a sycophant, like you said. It's just going to tell you, it's going to blow smoke up your butt. Um, it's a people pleaser. Um, I think another thing is that ChatGPT will take you down some dark paths. There's been like stories in the press about this of folks who are actually like on the edge of the mental health and kind of like they need real help, and ChatGPT is just taking them down a pretty dark path. That's
Oof.
like suggesting that they like cut everyone out of their life, or like suggesting that they like abandon people, or that you know they respond to abandonment that they have experienced with like anger. Like it's not good. And so
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I think it can be helpful for people, and the default is that it is going to be quite helpful because again it's optimizing for that thumbs up, but like it's not built for safety in terms of
Hmm.
this. And that's a really important difference between a system like ours versus ChatGPT. Another thing is that ChatGPT does have a memory system baked in, but at least right now, it's a very primitive memory system. It's basically just taking like text samples of things you've said in the past and storing those as memories, and then it'll just bring those into the conversation if it thinks it's relevant to that conversation. So it's basically just like a RAG system as far as my understanding of it. Um, Now that could get better, and I hope it does. But as of right now, that's the state of the art with ChatGPT's memory. And kind of like what I was saying before about like if you're talking to your partner, it doesn't matter what she said at 3:42 p.m. yesterday. Like what matters is like her mental state and whether she's motivated by certain things, or where her life trajectory is headed. And so our memory system with Metla is significantly more sophisticated and nuanced, and is going to have a much richer portrait of like your psychology and what's actually going to be helpful for you. And then I think the last thing is that like ChatGPT is not going to ever do thinking about you or forming hypotheses about you while you're gone.
Oh.
So, like I was saying about like when you're sleeping, our system is like thinking about you and improving its understanding. ChatGPT,
Mm.
as soon as you close that window, like it's gone. Like it's not going to be doing any jobs in the background, so that when you
Wow.
come back the next time, it has a better conversation. It's not going to really build over time in that way.
Wow. That is really impressive. And I feel like that type of work has been probably going on for a long time. When did you guys like start working on this app? And then how has that evolved over time? Because just in the last year and some change that I've been in the AI scene, I feel like every month is just like some crazy new model. It takes over a whole bunch of
Yeah.
new things. So kind of want to walk back a little bit to the beginnings and kind of how that evolution has kind of played out for you guys, and how do you kind of keep up with all this stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think staying up to date on stuff is a challenge. It's kind of ironic, but like I actually think using AI to read papers or ask very specific questions about like, hey, there's a new paper. How is it relevant to me? Like, so it's never been easier to learn, I think, with these tools, but also like there's more than ever to learn in this space. And so it's kind of like we're running on a treadmill and we're end up in the same place in some way. But I think for us, one really important thing when you're building here, and my suggestion to anyone in the audience is like, make sure that you're building on a solid foundation that, people talk about like riding the wave, or at
Mm.
least that's what we call it internally. I don't know if that's a
Mhm.
term everyone else uses, but let me just define that, which is
You're based in
riding the wave
Hawaii,
for
so it makes
us.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm here in Hawaii, in Oahu, so it's a good metaphor. When we say riding the wave at Mentla, what we mean is like, basically, are you set up such that you're excited when Grok 4 comes out, or Gemini 3.5 Flash Pro comes out, as opposed to 2.5, right? So like when the new model comes, are you excited by that because you know that that's actually going to make your system smarter and stronger? Or if you're, say, in our case, we're doing some fine tuning on open source models, like, are you then able to like refine tune in a way that's not too capital intensive on like the, Llama Maverick, N plus one? Like, are you
Mm.
excited by that? Or is it actually a threat to you because you say, hey, they're actually just going to eat our lunch? So I actually think if you're doing anything where it's basically just a complicated prompt and like a very simple memory system, like it's going to eat your lunch. As soon as the new model hits, it's just going to probably be better than whatever you did in your last prompt.
Mm.
So you have to build a system that's more robust than that. So that's what I would say is like ride the wave, such that when new models hit, you're actually happy about it from a technical perspective and from like a staying ahead of the competition perspective.
I see. And earlier in your career, you were talking about when you were working at Calm and that scaled up and you kind of took this break and then you were kind of wanting to move into the next space to kind of reinvent yourself, but also maybe throw yourself at new challenges so you can grow yourself, right? Because you've done quite a
Yeah.
bit here. And so what
Yeah.
what was kind of like the decision tree there? Because I feel like back then it wasn't so obvious that like AI was these models were going to scale and kind of take each other like that fast. I think back in the day,
Mm.
for me, these types of things would take 5 years to kind of play out or 10 years or something. But now it just seems to be
Yeah.
almost, every release of the model.
Yeah. I think, well, we went out and raised money back in 2023.
Mm.
And I think that process of doing that actually like forces you, through VC, they really force you through the way that they structure those rounds to like really think through those questions of like, why now? And like, are you too early? Or is this actually the right time? But I don't think there's a simple formula to that. I mean, it really is more of an art than a science. I think that like we had a strong conviction even back in like 2022 when we were just deciding to work on this project. um, we had a strong conviction that like the tools were becoming sophisticated enough that we felt like now was a good time to focus on this, even though we were still in the GPT-2 era at the time that we like decided to start the company. It just felt like the right timing. So I don't necessarily have a formula for that, or if I'm even understanding your question properly, but like
Oh, yeah.
really is a little bit more of a gut feeling. It's kind of like you have to be looking at the trends, understanding where the technology is going. And then I think ultimately too, like having some experience where like I personally was like very early in the mobile wave,
Mm.
building iPhone apps like in 2008, like right when the App Store was created for the iPhone. And that was kind of the last big tech wave. And so I kind of like saw that and understood like how that like that peak and then the trough of that wave happens. And so I kind of felt like I understood a little bit better, like the AI wave just it feels like we're still in the up phase, but like having been already on like the down and watching like my skill set with mobile apps be like super in demand for a couple of years and then kind of become like stable and now it's like, oh, you can build apps, like so can everyone. You know what I mean?
So,
Like, and so that was good experience to kind of understand how those technologies kind of crest and fall.
I
But
see.
yeah.
Yeah. So in learning machine learning and maybe learning AI, what do you think kind of looking back now for people who are just getting started? I know people are trying to figure out like what ideas to get on and maybe they have an idea, they're very passionate about it. Let's just say they've even raised money for their, series A or something like that, or just some pre-seed type of thing. What do you think are going to be like the most important things to do right now? As far as like how should they be thinking about these AI models and kind of like what approaches and stuff that they're doing?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's a big question. I mean, you know, if you have anyone, if any of the guests want to DM me and talk about it, feel free. Um, Always happy to help other people thinking about founding a company. I think there's a lot of parts to it. It's like you have to be thinking about distribution. You have to be thinking about like where's your competitive advantage. You have to be thinking about like what kind of network do you have into like venture capital if you want to go that route. You have to be thinking about the technology and like where that's headed and why your tech strategy is like durable and will give you an advantage. You have to be like iterating and building and like trying things. Probably before you go to a VC, you should have like a prototype or a demo of some kind at minimum, if not like a working app that's like accepting payments and scaling up, and then go raise money. But
Mm,
I think there's a lot to that. It's almost too big of a question to really answer.
makes
If you
sense.
wanted me to talk about a more specific part of it, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions in the audience, definitely feel free to ask because this is your opportunity, especially if you're an AI builder as well. We can kind of
Yeah.
take a look at them for those who are asking some questions. And as far as like right now, I know like when you're making your stuff, and how do you approach, for example, like evals and stuff? Because when I'm making some apps, and I'm kind of setting up some basic parameters, sometimes I really don't know. I'm just kind of shooting in the dark. I was like, okay, I think I want to go in this direction. And then I'm
Yeah.
just trying to track some basic user metrics. So how do you go about just kind of deciding like what metrics you should be tracking and as far as conversion and like maybe user experience so that people kind of stay on your app longer and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I think evals in like the AI context would be more about like evaluating the outputs of like an LLM and whether those are conforming to some sort of guideline that you've been able to define, um, either using another LLM call or just using like sort of simpler like NLP techniques, sentiment analysis or something like that. When it comes to like analytics of like what to track in your app, I would say like my view is that when you're building a product, just like track a lot by default and give them like separate event names and send those to a system like Amplitude or Mixpanel. And then you're able to build like arbitrary funnels and really ask the right questions. I think there's kind of a whole art to like product science of like being able to ask the right questions. It's actually something that we did really well at Calm was like we had really good analytics on how people were falling off. We were able to run really sophisticated A/B tests on like small subsets of the population. So, it's not like we invented new territory there by doing A/B tests in like, 2017. But I do
Hmm.
think that like we did that better than most other apps, especially in like the mental health space. We were by far the most sophisticated there. And I think that was a huge competitive advantage for us. So I would say like having really good analytics on which actions your users are taking when they use your product and then being able to build funnels and say like, hey, for users who came from like this ad campaign, like how do they compare on like the paywall conversion versus users who didn't come from that ad campaign? Like those are the
Oh,
kinds
wow.
of questions that you're going to want to be able to answer without knowing beforehand when you build the product like which questions those are going to be. So it's kind of
Mm.
like in the same way that like with like a good well-structured SQL table or SQL database, you're able to like have the structure of the data be like clean and simple, because you don't know which questions you're going to have of that data later. And so if you structured it well, you should be able to ask like any question of the data. And I would say the same thing is true for analytics, where like you don't want to like make your analytics stack so specific that you're only able to ask like a very specific set of questions that you already knew beforehand. You want to make it very general so that you have basically all the events that occur in the app, and then you can kind of construct different charts or answers to questions that you may have that come up. Like in 3 months, you may want to go back and look and be like, hey, what was this again? And so kind of separating like the structure of the data from like how you're going to query it. I could go more into that if people are interested, but
That's
actually
super
feel
cool.
like that's
Yeah.
one of my areas of expertise is like how to set up a good a good product analytics stack, especially on
Oh,
Amplitude in particular is the system I've used most.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
It's
whoa.
not quite about not quite AI. It's kind of like pre-AI. It's kind of like mobile app development analytics.
I see. I see. And so as far as like in your app, like how has it evolved over when you maybe first started a couple of years ago, and kind of where do you see this space going now? I think ChatGPT, and you're saying like you saw some of the safety stuff and these concerns, and then you
Yeah.
guys made product decisions to be like, okay, we're not going to always agree with the user. We're actually going to do what's really right because that's what we feel is right in terms of your motto or mission. So, what would you how would you describe your like overall mission as far as Metla and like what you guys trying to do for the world and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You're good at the multi-part questions, Ray.
I'm
It's
just like,
good. You're no,
I,
you're pushing me. You're pushing me. This is great. Okay, so in terms of what is our mission, I think our mission is to build the world's most powerful and helpful AI therapist. That's really what we're doing. I think in terms of how to do that, I was talking before about like for us, the key is that it has to be engaging and clinically effective. And doing both of those things, not just one or the other, is really, I think, the key there. And it's easier said than done. It's a complex technical problem, and that's kind of the hill we're climbing on, is that particular hill. And defining how to define that hill is kind of the secret sauce in some ways for us.
makes
Um,
sense.
I think I think in terms of where I think the industry is going, I mean, I actually think that like there will consistently remain certain domains that are more specialized, or maybe more along the lines of like an entire person's job. So people talk a lot about like, oh, AI can only automate tasks, but it can't automate jobs yet. I actually think that's starting to not be the case anymore as of just like say the last like 6 months.
Hmm.
If you build specialized systems, I think that's still true of just a base model. Like no
Hmm.
matter how complicated your prompt, if you're only going to call it once and just like use a base like Grok 4 or whatever, like it's only going to be able to automate a task, but not a job, an entire person's job. But I think
Ooh,
we're now in the era where, people talk about the era of agents or whatever,
right.
just kind of a similar concept. But I think we're now in the era where, like, if you build a system that's well constructed, I think you can actually automate entire jobs with these systems. And so I think that if I were like starting from scratch and wasn't already building an AI therapist, like what
Hmm.
I would try to do is say, what is like a, people talk about verticals in tech, but I
Yeah.
would say like, think of like an actual job that people do. Like
Mm.
for us, it's doing therapy, it's a therapist. But for
Hmm.
you, maybe it's like a certain type of like technical role that you understand, and it's like a behind the scenes like support role or whatever it is, like something that you have like expertise on a particular role, and say like, how can I automate that entire job function? And then eventually you're going to be able to just go to a business who hires those people and say like, hey, like we have a system for you that can do that. So that's kind of where I think the industry is going, is the people who are going to
Wow.
succeed here are the ones who are able to build systems on top of the base models that are significantly more sophisticated at a particular set of tasks.
This is a really fascinating topic to kind of unpack there a little bit, because your advice here is saying that the models have progressed enough to say that yes, you can do one query, and yes, it can be really impressive as far as one result, but the chaining of this and then the like reasoning and putting that together into like a product is actually
Yeah,
kind of like the golden
exactly.
goose here, that
Exactly.
will keep laying those
Exactly.
eggs for you in the future. And so
Yes.
previously, I think for me, when I think back, maybe 10 years ago, that was just a lot of if else statements, right? It does is right. Like thinking about, okay, this use case, but then this happens and then this happens. And then like, oh, we didn't write that case. And then, or we forgot to add this specific value to check for null or something. And then it crashes. And now we have to add, so it was just this constant
Right.
discovery of like building this spaghetti code to do this to happen. But now with these LLMs, you can throw some more ambiguity at it, and then it
Exactly.
itself can have some type of automation around it. And so for me, I think about like maybe a role that I did a lot early on was like in QA. So it was just like literally putting a
Yeah.
build on a phone, like pushing buttons and seeing, okay, what's happening here? And like you find a plethora of bugs. And I think today, with today's vision models, with today's like even basic reasoning, and it's just like, especially since it's engineering, it's like, did this test work or did it not? It's kind of like, you
Right.
find a lot of bugs just literally installing a build of software, just like, and you'll find out a lot across the stack. And so that it itself, you're saying, could be just a product that someone can
Yeah.
actually deliver to a company saying, hey, I'm going to install this and you're going to get all this data. And then this, I think maybe like while you have a product, this is maybe product focused, as a builder, I always tend to be product focused, but the other side of it is maybe the business part, right? Like how do you approach a problem that is actually people are going to
Yeah.
be willing to pay for too, right? It's like the kind of the flip side of
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, making sure that there's a real market there is crucial. You can do some like simple market sizing analysis of like how many people are doing this job and how much do they make and what's the geographic distribution? Do they all make $1 an hour in the Philippines or $3 an hour? Like, or are they actually like high paying like people in the United States doing it for, 200K a year or something? Like those are pretty different types of problems to approach. But I think like thinking about what is your unique competitive advantage in the market, because ultimately you're probably not going to be as good as the human at every single thing, most likely. Maybe you will, but most likely you won't. There will be some gaps in which you are worse than a human, but there are going to be other advantages. Like in our case, it's available 24/7. It's available
Mm.
at 4 in the morning on Saturday when you're having a panic attack. Like you can use it, you
Wow.
can use it for 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day instead of an hour a week, like a real therapist. So like those are big advantages. Also, like the cost point is way lower. It's available in 50 languages. Like today, if you go on mentla.com, you'll see it's available in the world's top 50 languages, which I think 99.99% of people speak at least one of those languages. So basically, it's available to every single person in the world. Those are all huge advantages over like a human. But there's other things that it's not going to be as good at as a human therapist, obviously. And so, like, I think thinking through what are your advantages for that particular job that you're trying to automate that you can say to someone who would have made the choice of do I want to hire this person or do I want to buy your product? Like, what are those advantages that you're going to have? That's how I would
Mm.
think about it.
That's pretty cool. And you play around a lot with these language models. I just kind of want to get your opinion. Do you have any go-to favorites on your day-to-day usage, and how are you kind of using AI day to day as well? If you do use it, AI, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I've noticed that my use case now has been super heavy in voice prompting. I use an app called Super Whisper. So I just press like Option Spacebar, um, and I like downloaded the local model, so it's like super fast, and it just transcribes. It's also really accurate too, for how fast it is. So I think we finally reached the point in the past year that like voice transcription, at least in English, I'm not familiar with other languages, but at least in English, voice transcription is like solved. It's basically superhuman at this point. And so
Wow.
because of that, I usually prompt with my voice, which is I tried to test it. I'm a pretty fast typer and I have a nice keyboard. I think I type around like 95 words a minute, but I tested voice versus typing, and I was like 2.6x faster with my voice. And just
Whoa.
talking at a regular speed. If I was talking, it was trying. If I was trying to talk as fast as I can, just like I was trying to type as fast as I could, I feel like it would have been three and a half times faster, which is a huge amount. So like I'm talking to these LLMs so much because I'm coding in Cursor, and so that voice unlock has been a huge speed up for me. So that's my kind of in the past 2 months. That's been the biggest change in my workflow is using my voice almost exclusively. I almost don't prompt with my keyboard anymore. I only prompt these things with
Whoa.
my voice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's really, really big. What's the
I
local
do
model that
I
you're
do a lot of
running?
I do copy and paste. I do
Okay.
that. That is a
Yeah.
big one. I like will take a document from somewhere that I have, like, hey, here's this PDF explaining this thing. I'll paste it in. That I
All right.
use my keyboard for, obviously. But then, like, when I'm actually then having to write the prompt of what I want it to do with that information, I use my voice. Um, yeah, it's called Super Whisper. So you
Mhm.
guys should all check it out. It's a great app. And Super Whisper, just you can, I think it's like you have to pay for it, I think, but it's like a one-time fee, which I don't really, which is nice. It's like a one-time fee, and then you
Mhm.
can download local models or use their cloud models. But they just have a list of them. I'm just using like the most accurate local model they have, and it works
Oh,
great.
wow. That's super duper cool. I know she also said you're using Cursor. Are there any other like dev tools that you like to use as well? And kind of what has been your, um, like other tech stack stuff?
Um, yeah, I mean, I use Cursor for almost everything. I haven't found a way to use Cloud Code in my workflow yet.
Hmm.
I know Ray, you're a big fan, but I personally find it hard to work without like my IDE. For
Mhm.
example, like I'll give you an example is like it's not even just that I always need to like see the code and like click accept. I honestly often will just accept all. It's less about that part. It's more about creating the context that I need in Cloud Code feels harder for me. So for example, like if I'm saying like, hey, here's this function in this one place, like please use that as a reference, it's like then I have to then go open Cursor and then go to that file and then like find that function and copy it and then go back to my terminal and paste it in. It's like, why am I doing that? Why don't I just use Cursor? Like it just feels all integrated. I saw this thing
Mhm.
that Elon tweeted yesterday, which to me felt really, I mean, it felt silly to me. He was like, oh, just copy paste a file into Grok and then like ask it to fix your bugs. Like this is what everyone at XAI does. And I was like, really? Why? Like, why don't they just use Cursor like that? That seems so inefficient. And so, but I actually think that Cloud Code for me has a similar issue. I know that I can do like an at and like reference the entire file, but like without the IDE app, it's hard for me to like know if I actually got the right file or even like remember what it was called. And I can't do like a global search and be like, oh yeah, here's that file, that's right, and then I'll paste it in. It's like Cloud Code, I just have to like know the path, and I often don't know the path. And so
Right.
Cursor just feels like it's like the right balance for me of like having all of my IDE tools, but still being able to access the chat. And they have background agents now too, so I can just like fire off. Sometimes I'll have
Yeah, I was
like
going to
three or
ask
four
if
of
you've
them
tried that
going at a
out
time.
and
Yeah,
your
I
experience
have.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's great. It's great. I feel like the bottleneck is less on Cursor. It's more on me being able to like prompt it with like two things that aren't going to like conflict in the code base. And so then I have to be like working on two different tasks at the same time and be like, oh yeah, I have both of them in my head and I understand them. So that's
That's actually what I was going to
it's kind of
ask you. I was
cool.
like,
It's like
how do you, like,
I'm
cause
the
like sometimes I
bottleneck,
work on
not
some
Cursor.
navbar UI thing and I was like, okay, I'm doing
Yeah,
that. Okay. I'm not touching the database yet. Okay. What's going on with the database? So,
right, right. Yeah, exactly. The way that I've done it is more for like back end and front end. So what I'll do is I'll have like my back end is written in Python and then my front end is in TypeScript, but they're both in like the same cursor like window. And then when I'm doing like a CRUD, like create, read, update, delete type of thing, like a simple back end call, I'll have one agent that's like writing the front end code for that. I'll basically like define a little API spec of like the JSON inputs and outputs and types that's like language agnostic.
mm,
And then I'll use that as the prompt for two agents. One I give to like the Python backend and say like implement this and actually write to the database and create
ooh,
like a new table. And then the other one will say like implement this on the front end and actually like call this endpoint with the right data and like pass it from like the the React components into that API call. And so they're kind of like working on the same problem from different angles. And then both agents like write it at the same time and I can then kind of run it end to end. That works well because it's actually like it's two different tasks. And normally I would have to like context switch between like TypeScript and Python, which
yes.
takes a few minutes to kind of switch your brain over, but it can then do both of those at the same time. But my headspace is still on like this one problem, which is like solving this one API flow. I've tried a few times to like have it be doing something totally different while I'm working on something else, but I'm just not
It's a
smart
merging
enough. I
nightmare.
can't.
Yeah.
It's too much for me to keep in my head at the same time. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I'm kind of sort of old school in that way. So as far as like writing this spec, that would interface between the front and the back end. Was that also written by Cursor as well?
Sometimes, yeah.
Hmm.
Usually I'll just write like, usually it's just like a JSON. It's basically TypeScript. Usually it's
Hmm.
like a
Yeah,
TypeScript type that defines like the JSON inputs and outputs.
makes
Um,
sense.
so I'll usually, I guess it was written by Cursor in some ways, because usually I'll actually just define it in TypeScript first,
Hmm.
like the actual TypeScript interface. If you're familiar with TypeScript, there's a thing called an interface, which has all of the types. And sometimes that's like an embedded nested JSON structure. I'll usually just define that in Cursor using like the tab complete,
Yes.
but it's like my actual code base. And then I'll copy that like, 10 lines of TypeScript, and that'll be like, hey, this is the interface between the backend and the front end for this API call.
Oh man, that's fantastic. I like these little tips and things. Are there any other tips that you learned that were like recently you're like, oh man, if I knew this, like, or something you just learned recently, like I didn't realize if you hit this like key combo or this like little cloud icon or something that you do this
Mm.
now or enable this toggle in the settings that I should have enabled a long time ago or something like that? Is there been anything
Yeah,
interesting?
good question. I mean, I feel like I come up with those quite a bit of like new key commands. One thing I would say to anyone listening is like, really invest, if you're a software engineer, like really invest in learning the key commands for everything you do. Um, it really does pay dividends in your speed, like significant dividends. If you're using your mouse, it's not that it's bad to use your mouse. Obviously, you can do it, but like I try to have key commands for almost everything I do in my workflow, because it's actually a lot slower than you think to go to the mouse and like move your little mouse cursor and then like find like the little X button and then click it or whatever. Like it literally takes like 50 times longer. It doesn't feel like that because it's the difference between like 100 milliseconds versus like 5 seconds, and like 5 seconds isn't that long, but like that's a 50x slowdown, you know? And so those really add up. So what I would say is like number one, pick tools. Like for example, when I read my email, I use Superhuman, um, which is like an email client that's like heavily, everything has a key command, right?
Hmm.
And it's like built for, whereas Gmail like doesn't have those. They have a few, but not nearly as many. And so I can't just like go through my inbox with only my keyboard. So like from pick a tool that's like focused on key commands as like a first class citizen,
Hmm.
um, and then learn the key commands that you need to be efficient. And almost like think about every time you touch your mouse, it's almost like a little bit of a penalty. And think if you can like, how many minutes can I go without sacrificing my workflow at all, but like genuinely, I never needed to touch the mouse. And that will make you significantly faster at everything you do.
Whoa. So I need to check out Superhuman because I think you're like the third person who's told me about this very recently. And
It's
you're
really nice.
saying
Yeah, I like it a
you
lot.
literally all key commands and
Yeah.
then AI features to reply to emails, sounds like. Do you use those as well?
Sometimes that's
Okay.
less for me the issue. It's just I like the fact that they organize my inbox really nicely, and yeah, it's just a lot faster for me to go through my inbox with Superhuman. So
Wow. Oh, cool. Yeah, definitely have to check that out. Are there any other like
cool.
books or things that you'd recommend before we head on out for the folks who are watching?
I think anyone in AI should be reading. This is my view, is that like I don't always follow my own advice, nor does anyone. So just be aware if you're listening to any gurus out there, they're probably not even following their own advice. They're just giving it to you. And this is what I'm doing right now. But I would say like it's been a while since I've done this, but I would say like anyone in AI right now should be reading like old books. And the reason
Hmm.
I say that, like hundreds to even thousands of year old books. And the reason I say that is because like I think we're going through a time of like rapid transformation. I think that um it's important to like have like a foundation for like what is true across time, not just like what is true yesterday on Twitter. And so that's what I would suggest is like read more books that are like written by people who were exactly like you in terms of like the meat in their head, but they were going through significantly different times in terms of like the events that were occurring in like, the 1400s in Italy or whatever it is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that, but you'll be surprised how much like commonality you see, and I think that that's the best way to like give ourselves like a foothold in this rapidly changing time, where everything feels up for grabs. Like the idea of like a job and whether we use jobs to like make a living, like I don't know if that's going to be true in 10 years. Like this is like a really crazy time. And so I
Yeah.
think we all need like deeper roots, basically.
Tyler Sheaffer. What a awesome interview. And I'm really excited to have you on the show, from
Awesome,
going
man. It was super
from
fun.
calm all the way to the new mentla venture that you're
Yeah.
basically kicking off. And for those who are interested, make sure you go check out the app, right? Mentla.com, mentla.com, and free to get started, which is really awesome. I mean, free tier, all about that. And it won't really break your bank, which is really awesome. And you basically get this professional quality uh, interface to talk about your mental health, or talk to like a professional basically in this way. So that's super exciting as one way to kind of get started with some folks' journeys as far as mental health. You've shared a lot of really good nuggets on the show as far as kind of where you were to where things are going today, and then some of the background in AI and all this other stuff, and immensely helpful. And so, where else can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at TYSHEAFF. You can follow me there. Don't use much social media, honestly. I
Yeah.
try to avoid Twitter more than maybe once or twice a week. I go on and see whatever crazy thing people are talking about today. And I try to use it for just staying up to date, but I'm not a huge poster, to be honest. And so I find it very distracting. Uh,
Yes.
it's the signal to noise ratio can be it, it it's almost like I find it too easy to like consume a lot of it. It's
Hmm.
kind of like it feels like junk food to me. Not that there's anything wrong with the hamburger, but like just feels like, yeah, kind of going back to my point of like reading old things, like being on Twitter is the exact opposite of that. But that is also the only social media I do use. And I am on there probably more than I admit. So I will if you DM me on Twitter, I will definitely see it. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. It's awesome. And definitely feel free to check it out as far as folks who are checking out. We also have a show every month called The Forward Pass. So Tyler is the host of the
Yeah.
show. And basically, not only myself, but a couple other engineers who are working on things in AI, ML, and this whole space here, we'll be able to kind of share our journey as far as what's going on. So make sure you check that out. That's actually currently available as a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube as well. So you
Yeah.
do a great job kind of, wrangling everyone in and getting our topics going every month. So Tyler, it's been an awesome pleasure to have you on the show, and look forward to having you for the next episode.
Thanks, Ray.
Awesome. Take it easy, y'all. See ya.
Bye guys.